My name is Claire. The engine of my luxury car hummed steadily as I drove away from the house, the weight of what I'd just done settling heavily in my chest. Behind me, I could hear the shouts and the chaos I'd left in my wake. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about finally standing up and being seen. I cast my mind back to my childhood. I grew up in a well-to-do family in the suburbs. My father, Henry, was a successful businessman, and my mother, Lily, was a homemaker. I had two brothers, Ethan and Lucas. Ethan, the older one, was a born salesman. With his smooth talk and charismatic personality, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. Lucas, as the younger, was a gifted athlete, with trophies lining his bedroom walls. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. I loved to read and write, spending hours in my room lost in my own world. I used to think that if I tried harder, did better in school, and made myself more likable, my father would finally look at me with pride. But it never happened. I remember one Christmas when I was 13. I'd spent weeks making a handmade scarf for my father. I'd chosen the softest wool and knitted it with so much love. When I presented it to him, he barely glanced at it, mumbled a quick thanks, and then went back to talking to Ethan about his latest business idea. A few minutes later, Lucas gave him a high-end golf club, and my father's face lit up like a Christmas tree. He hugged Lucas and said, "That's my boy." I stood there, the scarf still in my hand, feeling invisible. At family dinners, it was always the same. My father would ask Ethan about his deals and Lucas about his games. He never once asked me about my day or my dreams. If I tried to speak up, he'd give me a dismissive look and turn the conversation back to my brothers. My mother would try to comfort me, saying, "You're special, Claire," but even she knew the hierarchy in our family. I worked hard in school, getting straight A's, but it was never enough. When Ethan landed his first big deal, my father threw a huge party. When Lucas won a state championship, the whole family went on a luxury vacation. But when I got accepted into a prestigious writing program, my father just said, "That's nice, dear," and then went about his business. Despite the constant neglect, I refused to give up. I started working on my own writing projects, pouring my heart and soul into them. I faced countless rejections, but I kept going. I took on part-time jobs to support myself and used the money to buy writing courses. After years of hard work, I finally launched my own digital publishing platform. It was an innovative idea that aimed to give independent writers a chance to be heard. The launch event was held in a swanky downtown conference room. Investors, industry experts, and the local press were all there. I was nervous but excited as I took the stage. I talked about my vision, the challenges I'd overcome, and the bright future I saw for the platform. The room was silent, hanging on to every word I said. For the first time, I felt truly seen. After the presentation, the room was abuzz with excitement. I received handshakes, congratulations, and even some investment offers. I was on cloud nine. But then, later that week, we had a family dinner. As soon as we sat down, the conversation turned to my brother's achievements. Ethan talked about his new startup, and Lucas boasted about his upcoming international sports event. My father beamed with pride as he listened to them. I took a deep breath and tried to speak up. "I just launched my own business," I said, my voice a little shaky. But my father interrupted me, saying, Yes, we know you're busy. Let's talk about the important things." That was the last straw. In that moment, I realized that I would never get the approval I craved from my father. I decided then and there that I would build a life that he couldn't ignore. I moved out of the city and rented a small apartment on the outskirts. I focused all my energy on my business. There were tough times. I had to live on a tight budget, and there were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was making the right decision. But I kept going. Slowly but surely, my platform started to gain traction. We attracted more writers and readers, and our user base grew. A niche investor saw the potential in our platform and invested $500,000. With that money, I was able to hire a small team of like-minded people. I still kept a low profile. I didn't share my success with my family. I let them think I was still the same quiet, unimportant girl. But inside, I was changing. I became more confident, more assertive. I made decisions without second-guessing myself. I bought my first car, a sleek black luxury vehicle, and I signed a lease for a modern office space with floor-to-ceiling windows. I was finally living the life I'd always dreamed of, and it was all on my own terms. This year, I decided to go to the annual Father's Day dinner. I hadn't been home in almost 2 years. The night before, I stood in a car dealership, signing the paperwork under a new last name I'd legally changed after my business took off. Next to me was a small black envelope containing the ownership document of the company that had just acquired the firm my father worked for. When I pulled into the driveway on Father's Day, my brothers were already there, laughing and having a good time on the patio. My father was at the head of the table, looking smug with a glass of wine in his hand. His eyes widened in confusion when he saw me, but then he forced a smile. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," he said. The dinner was filled with the usual forced laughter and my brothers bragging. Ethan talked about his new mansion, and Lucas talked about his sponsorship deals. My father nodded and smiled, clearly proud of them. Then, I stood up. "I brought something for you, Dad," I said. I walked outside, drove the luxury car into the driveway, and then walked back inside. I placed the black envelope on the table in front of him. "Happy Father's Day," I said. Everyone in the room gasped. "Is that a car?" Ethan asked, squinting. Lucas leaned forward and said, "You bought that?" My father looked at me, completely stunned. He picked up the envelope, his hands shaking. "What's this?" he asked. "Just open it," I said calmly. As he read the document, his face turned pale. His jaw dropped, and he stared at me in disbelief. "What is this?" he barked. I gave him a long look. "You remember the company you've worked at for the past 15 years? It's under new ownership. I bought it through a silent acquisition last week. So, no, I'm not the loser at the table. I'm the woman who just became your boss's boss." The room fell silent. My brothers looked at me in shock. My father's hands trembled as he tried to find the words to say. I turned and walked out the door, got into my car, and drove away. As I drove, I knew that my family was in chaos. My father, who had always been so proud and in control, was now facing the consequences of his years of neglect. My brothers, who had always been in the spotlight, were finally seeing me as a force to be reckoned with. I didn't look back. I was finally free from the chains of their expectations. I had built a life for myself, and I was proud of who I had become. The phone in my pocket buzzed with messages from my family, but I ignored them. I was focused on my future, a future that was all mine.